This is a topic that has been difficult to bring on air, and for obvious reasons. A lot of people have views on different aspects when we start to talk about issues of assisted dying or euthanasia or assisted suicide. These become very, very emotional issues, and in discussion on them I want to state in the outset that I'm very sympathetic with anybody in talking of these issues. I have a framework of reference that comes from a chaplaincy and a support type of background to people that are going through difficult times, and at the same time I would declare too that my Christian faith would put me on the side of life, and therefore that we should uphold life but whatever the situation that comes our way. However, that's not necessarily the view of governments where we've seen Tasmania in this last few days voting on this particular issue. And it's not only Tasmania but Victoria in June 2019 brought in assisted dying. There's been 50 deaths in the first 6 months in the second half of 2019, 174 deaths across 2020. That's a rapid acceleration of people who have used the laws in Victoria for assisted dying or euthanasia. In Victoria, 465 permit applications have been made in the past 18 months, with only 60 refused. Yet in Victoria, the authorities don't think that figure is high enough, with them calling on the federal government to drop a telecommunications law that would prohibit assisted dying over a telecommunications service. They're saying here that they believe that rural Victorians need that opportunity, which is the Victorian government's position. And Western Australia's legislated its first scheme. It doesn't commence until the middle of this year, the 1st of July 2021. South Australia has an upper house MP, an MLC, Kayam Ma, and he wishes to legislate the assisted dying or euthanasia, legalising it in the South Australian legislature, and he is a Labor Party member in the upper house. These are quite significant decisions and moves towards this legislation, but we have the added issue when we talk about this in regional areas, the circumstances surrounding the COVID-19, surrounding drought, surrounding the topic of mental health issues. We're hearing a lot of talk on these particular things and seminars on them. And in yesterday, the federal government that did have one of its recovery sessions for drought and flood that was held at the Footy Club rooms. But I want to say that there is an importance here for us to keep in mind that the legislation, while it was brought into Victoria and it was talked of that there would be a minuscule amount of deaths, there certainly is a growing number. I think that becomes the concern under any of these legislations, that if we take the status quo, that is what is there now, we have long-term palliative care programs. We have the ability for those palliative care programs to use pain-killing to ensure that people are comfortable in the latter part of their dying. And when we start to move into these other particular options that are being made available in certain states and that in other states are against the law, becomes a really, really difficult discussion. And while one state might do it, it doesn't mean that it is right. It also doesn't mean that it can't be changed for a circumstance to be brought back in legislature the other way. And while there are very emotive matters, something that if you're concerned about, you should write to your local Member of Parliament at a state level. And when we consider these things, we have had a system for a long time. Some say that it isn't a good enough system and want laws changed, as they have in Tasmania and in WA and Victoria. But in other places, they will consider these same laws. It is something that has to be discussed, and the Parliament is the place for it, and certainly your letters to your members of Parliament are crucial in determining how these votes may go. And there is counselling services available if you have any issues at the moment. 131114 is Lifeline. There is also the services at Beyond Blue, Men's Helpline, Kids Helpline, and a range of other counselling services through your local GP and so forth. But certainly it's a tough topic to discuss, but one that with the changes in legislation that are happening in Tasmania, one I think worthy of mention today.